Solving the cross. When I do solve critiques, this is one of the #1 mistakes that I notice people are making, even very good cubers. After using your inspection time to find all the cross pieces and determine a solution for them, you should execute the solution as fast as you can. Of course, this means you have to plan out the entire cross solution and face the side that gives you the least cube rotations and best finger tricks. And then make sure you're executing that solution as fast as you can. At first, it's very hard to turn at your fastest for the cross because you're still looking at all the pieces as you solve and you haven't fully optimized the finger tricks yet, you're just watching how every piece goes in. But you should aim to do the cross at your maximum turning speed. And this means you won't have to think about the cross as you do it once you make this a habit. Now, some of you advanced solvers out there might be wondering if it's ever worth it to slow down your cross solution so that you can watch where the pieces go and more easily find your first pair during your cross. Slow down and look ahead can be good advice for later in the solve, but during the cross, there's no need because at the highest level, when you don't want to pause, you will be predicting the first pair during inspection anyway. Number 2, never do 2 cube rotations for an F2L case. The fastest way to solve any F2L case always takes 0 or 1 cube rotation. If you're solving a pair and it takes you 2 cube rotations, then you are not doing it the fastest way. Instead, you could solve it like this. This sheet has a good way to solve every F2L case in 0 or 1 cube rotations. And no, the rotation at the start does not count. That is just showing you which side you started facing the case from. Anytime you get a solve where you notice you did 2 cube rotations to solve a case, stop, go look at the sheet, and learn to solve it properly. Also, make sure you've learned F2L and then advanced F2L, otherwise you shouldn't really be worrying about this yet. Number 3, choosing good cube rotations. Avoid cube rotations when possible, but not always. Sometimes it's just fastest to insert with a cube rotation. But usually when you have to cube rotate, there are actually 2 choices of which way you can rotate. The general rule when you have to rotate is to solve the back slot. That way you still have open front slots where you can see pieces and you never have to look here again. From here, I can easily see this pair, which would have been very difficult to see from this side. So sometimes we break this rule, and this usually happens near the end of F2L, where instead you want to rotate to find pieces. In this case, if I rotate this way, I have more visible pieces. When you first learn about which way to rotate, it can be hard to think about all the nuances, so start with the simple rule of inserting into back slots, and once you're used to that, you can start thinking about when to break that rule. Number 4, how to find pieces faster. Finding the pieces you want during F2L is hard, but don't do this. The first thing you should do is look around the top layer using U moves. There you go. There you go. Now we can easily solve one of these cases and not do any cube rotations. But if you didn't find what you were looking for in the U layer, the second thing to do is look in your front slot. And that may give you something you want, and you can solve that one right away. Now, if what you're looking for is not in the top layer or a front slot, it must be in a back slot. But try not to look at the back because usually you won't need to, and there are other pieces you can solve that are visible. You won't always find pieces at the front and top, but you almost always will, and I find that a lot of people look to the back or rotate to the back way too often. If you have a solved front slot and you have to look at the back, or you have 2 solved front slots and you have to look at the back, ask yourself how this even happened, because most likely you chose the wrong cube rotations when solving these and should have followed the previous tip that told you to solve into back slots instead. Number 5, regripless finger tricks. If you want to be a fast cuber, learn this as soon as you can. I see people get quite fast and haven't even learned this yet and have to relearn a bunch of their finger tricks, which is such a headache. A regrip is when you have to readjust your hand to start turning without actually doing a turn during that adjustment. Obviously, you should try to avoid this when possible, and you can solve these cases without a regrip. So during especially F2L, you want your thumbs to be on the front and you start and end your algorithms like this. After you do an R move, if you have to do U, you either pinch turn like this or do a lefty U-turn like this. Both are less comfortable than probably what you've learned at the start, which is like that, but they are much faster because you do not have to do that regrip. Of course, same goes for the left side. You want to do it like this to insert it. If you're in a case where you have to do a U2 move, don't do it like this because you have to regrip. Instead, do U2 with the other hand. And you also want to try not to regrip for back slots. A lot of people do this for absolutely no reason. You can just do that same thing from home grip. And even for something like this, you can insert it with this finger trick. You can check out my finger tricks tutorial to see all the finger tricks you should learn and when to use each one. I know I've given this specific tip so many times in so many videos, but a lot of people still haven't learned it, which is why I try to put it in as many videos as I can. Trust me, it feels weird at first to do stuff like this, but in the end, you will find this was much worse and you cannot believe you actually did that. Number 6, bookmarking. This tip is something I struggled with for a long time, and I'm still not the best at it, but I think it's because I wasn't thinking about it from early on enough, so you should definitely start thinking about this early. Bookmarking is just remembering something that you saw and using it later. Even if it leaves your vision, you try to remember that it was there. I don't think there's an accepted term for this. I just heard Felix Zemdeg say bookmarking once, and I'm rolling with it. So let's say I just finished the cross and I see this. Well, I'm gonna try and keep this in my head. If you're really good, you can remember exactly what this looks like, but I'll just remember the orange blue pairs here, and it sucks, so I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to do something else first. So now I'll just solve this pair, and I notice these two, so I can solve this next. And I notice as I'm solving this that it's actually going to take out the thing that I remember from earlier. So as I insert this, notice how it's really hard to spot what exactly that is. A lot of people would do this, but because I have bookmarked where it was and what it is, I can very quickly recognize the case and just solve it right away. Number 7, double recognition. Double recognition most commonly happens during OLO, and it's when you see a case, you technically have enough information from this to know exactly what case it is, but you still look at another side just to make it easier. This is usually because you have certain features memorized, but you don't have other features memorized that are actually equally as important. When you look at one side, can't recognize the case, and then look at another side when the first side was technically enough, you are adding probably over 1 second to your solve time just because you couldn't see what case it is. This also applies to F2L. If you see this case, do you know right away what case this is? A lot of people have the habit of always moving it to the front before seeing what case it is, when technically this is enough information. You just have to practice trying to deduce this case rather than always moving it to the front and pausing to recognize the case. I have a whole video about this as well, which goes over many common cases where people use double recognition. Number 8. Recognizing PLLs from all angles. When you first learn PLL, you will be looking at the arrow diagrams, but later on you want to recognize from the color patterns that you see on the cube. A lot of people only look at blocks because those are the easiest ones to see, but this is blue, red, blue, red, blue. This is a checker pattern and is just as easy to find if you're looking out for it. Can you recognize this case? This is an Rperm, but the block is over here, which makes it very hard to recognize unless you're specifically looking from this angle. And then there is the Yperm with the blocks here and the blocks here. On the opposite side, there are almost blocks, green, orange, and it makes the same pattern. There are a lot more patterns, and I'll link in the description a guide to two-side PLL recognition, and from that you can learn a lot of the important ones. Number 9, trying out new algorithms. In my videos, I recommend my favorite algorithms for each case, but that doesn't mean they will be your favorite in the end. For example, if you are very risk tolerant and want the fastest algorithm, even if it's with a finger trick you never use anywhere else, then you can use this Jperm. That wasn't even good. I prefer lower risk, which is why I like the MU Jperms. Usually I test out many algorithms and try to think through which one would be best for me, but that doesn't always work because I may have multiple algorithms that I really like and I cannot decide which one's my favorite. In that case, just try having each one as your main algorithm, and if you ever don't like it, you can just switch back. Here are a few examples I've actually made my main algorithm at some point. This way of doing Yperm, I ended up switching back. This way of doing Vperm, I ended up switching back. This way of doing Vperm, I ended up keeping it. This way of doing Fperm, I'm still testing. Number 10, buy from SpeedCube shop with the discount code Jperm. All right, this isn't the tip. Let me find the real one. Well, I mean, it's true, but here's tip number 10. Know your goal and act like you are trying to achieve it. This is such a huge one and will save you a lot of frustration if you really think this through. If you just want to be fast enough at cubing to impress people, well, you can just solve it in under 1 minute with the beginner method, do a couple solves a day, and you will be good forever. If you really like cubing and love learning new techniques for it and getting faster, but you're not really trying to be best in the world or anything, then of course, dedicate a lot of time to practicing and make sure you're having fun. If you want to win competitions, set records, be the best you can be, and maybe even the best in the world, then learn all the techniques you need to do different types of targeted practice where you try to identify your weaknesses and then fix them. Film yourself solving and try to figure out what you are doing wrong. When you get a bad solve, actually go back and look at it to see what you could have done better instead of just saying, I'll try better next time. And surround yourself with people who are also trying to get faster so you feel motivated and competitive. These are the three main categories of cubers. It doesn't matter which category you're in, you can choose whatever you like. The only problem I see is when people think they're in one category and act like they're in another category. And the people who get the most frustrated with cubing are the people who think they are trying to be the best in the world, but actually act like they are just a casual solver and don't take all the necessary steps to try and be the best, and then are frustrated when they don't improve. For everybody watching, I want you to take a look at these categories, think about which one you want to be, and ask yourself if you are actually taking the actions of the person in this category. All right, that's it for my tips. I hope you found this helpful, and leave a comment if you have any tip that would be helpful to other cubers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.